This lecture is from chapter 9 and is specifically on the theories of development. If you watched the last lecture was on the stages of development, this is on the theories related to development, and I'll mainly focus on Sigmund Freud, who we know as probably one of the most famous psychologists. It'll focus on his theories. A quote I like related to this lecture is humans should be permanently under development, and we are. We're always under development, we're always growing and learning. So remember that throughout your life and continue to grow and learn. There are 3 areas of development. There's physical development, which is the growth and changes in the body and brain, the senses, motor skills, and health and wellness. There's cognitive development, which involves learning, attention, memory, language, thinking, reasoning, and creativity. And there's psychosocial development, which involves emotions, personality, and social relationships. This lecture will primarily focus on the theories of cognitive and psychosocial development, as opposed to development of the body. Development of the body is discussed more in the stages of development lecture. So as I said, we'll focus a lot on Freud and his theory of psychosexual development. He believed that our behavior and personality as an adult is influenced by our childhood experiences. Freud believed there are 5 stages of childhood development, and it is worth noting that his theories have been mostly rejected by modern psychologists, but they still make a very important contribution to the discipline. He believed the first stage of childhood development was oral, which is birth to 18 months. If there is a lack of oral stimulation or an excessive amount of oral stimulation, this can affect the child's personality and or behavior as an adult. He believed that they would develop an oral fixation, which could include smoking, overeating, nail biting, and things like that. He believed the anal stage was from 18 months to 3 years. He believed that the primary focus of this stage was on bowel and bladder movements. A quote about this stage is that he believed that positive experiences during the toilet training stage serve as the basis for people to become confident, productive, and creative adults. If parents take an approach that is too lenient, Freud suggested that an anal expulsive personality could develop, in which the individual has a messy, wasteful, or destructive personality. On the other hand, if parents are too strict or begin toilet training too early, Freud believed that an anal retentive personality develops, in which the individual is very orderly, rigid, and obsessive. He believed the phallic stage was from 3 to 6 years. During this phase, a child is focused on his or her genitals. The child begins to discover the difference between males and females. And in this phase of early sexual development, the child may form the roots of fixation with the opposite sex parent. Freud suggested that fixations at this point could lead to adult personalities that are overly vain, exhibitionistic, and sexually aggressive. The next stage is called latency, and it's 6 years to puberty. During this stage, children's sexual impulses become suppressed, and no further psychosexual development occurs. Much of the child's energy is channeled into developing new skills and acquiring new knowledge, and play becomes largely confined to other children of the same gender. His idea was that if a child fails to make social connections during this period, it could impact their social skills. If a child fails to succeed academically during this stage, they might feel inadequate or incompetent. So social skills and academics are very important during this age, as opposed to the previous sexual impulses. From puberty to adult, this period marks the onset of romantic and sexual emotions, leading to the formation of intimate relationships. If individuals have unresolved conflicts or issues during this stage, it can lead to problems such as sexual dysfunction, difficulties forming healthy relationships, or other emotional problems. And on this slide, I went ahead and just included kind of a summary of all these stages: oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital. So I won't go through all those since we just discussed it, but you can take a look at that and how it summarizes it. So that was the psychosexual theory of development from Freud. Let's look at the psychosocial theory of development. The psychosocial theory of development was developed by Erik Erikson. Erikson's psychosocial development theory emphasizes the social nature of our development rather than its sexual nature. Erikson suggested that how we interact with others affects our sense of self, or what he called the ego identity. Erikson contended that there are 8 stages we need to complete in order to be successful in life. So let's take a look at each of those stages. Again, there are 8 stages in Erikson's stages of development, and these are related to social development. From age 0 to 1, infants learn to trust caregivers to meet their basic needs. 1 to 3, toddlers develop a sense of personal control and independence. 3 to 6 years, children assert control through directing play and social interactions. 6 to 12 years, children develop a sense of pride in accomplishments and abilities. 12 to 18 years, teens explore their personal identity and sense of self. 18 to 40 years, young adults form intimate, loving relationships with others. 40 to 65 years, adults create or nurture things that will outlast them, contributing to society. And 65 on, seniors reflect on life and either feel a sense of fulfillment or sometimes, unfortunately, regret. So those are the stages that Erikson said we go through, which primarily are stages of social development. Let's move on and look at a cognitive theory of development. Jean Piaget developed this theory, and his theory of cognitive development holds that our cognitive abilities develop also, as Erikson said, through specific stages, which exemplifies the discontinuity approach to development. As we progress to a new stage, there's a distinct shift in how we think and reason. So now let's look at those stages. So Piaget's periods of cognitive development. From birth to 2 years, he determined that the sensory motor stage, which an infant to 2 years of age uses their senses and motor skills, object permanence is learned. 2 to 6 years, he termed the pre-operational stage, in which symbolic thinking and egocentric thinking. Egocentric is when we're really not be able to see beyond ourselves. No development of empathy and the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. 7 to 11 years, concrete operational. The child is able to use logic and can interpret things. 12 years to adulthood is formal operational. That's what we're in as adults. We're able to think abstractly. We're able to think beyond ourselves and think of broader issues such as politics or religion. Social moral issues are explored. So those are Piaget's steps of cognitive development. We know cognitive is simply the way we think. Lastly, let's look at Kohlberg's stages of moral development. Again, Kohlberg developed this theory, and like Piaget, he believed this development occurred in stages. He identified 3 levels of moral reasoning. His first level is called pre-conventional morality, obedience and punishment. Our actions are judged by consequences. We only act to avoid punishment. We're very, as Piaget mentioned, very egocentric. In other words, we're very interested in ourselves. What's in it for me? We want to avoid punishment and seek rewards. Conventional morality, we have good interpersonal relationships, and we're good, or we behave to gain approval from others. Not just to avoid punishment, but to gain approval from others. And we follow societal rules and maintain order. Level 3 would be the highest level, post-conventional morality. We're moral because we have a social contract. We understand rules as changeable social agreements. And we follow universal ethical principles and our personal conscience when making decisions. So these are stages of morality. At first, we follow rules simply because we don't want to be punished or we want to be rewarded. It's that simple. And then eventually we get to a point where we're looking at our morality as a person in society and we want to follow universal principles and our own ethics. So that's it for, again, we focused on psychosexual development, psychosocial, cognitive, and moral development. If you have any questions, as always, please let me know.